Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. So today we're going to be talking about autofiction. So autofiction is a term used to describe fictionalized memoir. It basically stands for autobiographical fiction. So this means writing a book inspired by the events of your life, likely with a main character inspired by yourself, except instead of writing it as a memoir, you fictionalize aspects of it and write it as a novel. So why write autofiction? The first reason is that it allows you to write about real events of your life with added privacy. One reason many people just don't feel ready to write a memoir is just because it feels a little too vulnerable. The idea of writing their life story from their perspective and having it just available for anyone to read can be kind of daunting. Autofiction allows you to write about real events from your life, but with the added protection of it being fiction. The book will be sold as fiction, marketed as fiction, and so you'll be able to distance yourself more from the events and from the character, even if it is based on your life. So if you have a story inspired by your own life you want to tell, but you don't feel ready to tell it as a memoir, it allows you to tell that story in a fictionalized way. Of course, if your book is heralded as a work of autofiction, then readers will kind of put the dots together and be like, okay, this is inspired by the author's life, but there's always that extra barrier of it being fiction. No one other than yourself and maybe your close friends and family will know what in the book is truth and what in the book is fiction. The second benefit is that it allows you to take more creative liberties. When you're writing a memoir, you're telling the story as accurately as you can. But unlike in a memoir, you can adjust and make changes as you like to make the narrative more compelling, to fit certain themes, or even just to introduce an element that you think would make sense and fit well in the story but just didn't happen in real life. You aren't bound by the limit of truth, reality, or what actually happened because this is a work of fiction, even if it's heavily inspired by the truth. And the third benefit is that you can bring in the authenticity of your lived experience. One reason many writers turn to autofiction is simply because they have really compelling life experiences that they want to write about. And bringing the authenticity of that lived experience can create very rich writing. Writing autofiction doesn't have to come from the angle of, well, I wish I could write this as a memoir, but I'm not ready to write and market it as a memoir, or I want to take certain creative liberties. Maybe you just are a fiction writer and you enjoy writing fiction, and you have a real story that happened to you that would make really good fiction. You can create a very compelling narrative by being able to draw on all of the details and experience from your own life. So in the end, if you're debating the autofiction versus memoir question, it really is just a matter of personal preference. It really just depends on what's the better option for the story, but also for you as an author. So is autofiction a genre? Not really. It's more just a term used to describe a certain type of fiction. You won't find a section in the bookstore labeled as autofiction, and if you're pitching the book, say to agents, you'll probably query it as whatever genre it actually is, not as a work of autofiction. Autofiction isn't really a genre, it kind of just explains the author's relationship to their work. The other thing to know about this term is that its use can be pretty murky. For example, there are authors who are very open about their books being autofiction. Akwake Emezi has been very open about the fact that their debut novel, Freshwater, is essentially a memoir. There just was no avenue for them to write and publish that narrative and have it be sold and marketed as a memoir. So they wrote, sold, and marketed it as a work of literary fiction and have been open about the fact that it's very heavily based on their real life. Other times, a work is autofiction, but the author will never confirm or reveal that. It might be speculated by readers, or readers might have no idea. You've probably read works of autofiction that you have no idea are autofiction because the author is not revealing that it's based on their life, and that's okay, right? That might be the reason they chose to write it as autofiction rather than a memoir, was for that sense of privacy. However, there are times where readers and audiences will just start claiming that a work is autofiction or based on the author, even when the author hasn't confirmed it, even if it's maybe not true. Recently, many readers have claimed that one of the characters in Sally Rooney's newest novel, Beautiful World, Where Are You?, is based on her, making the work a work of autofiction. And Rooney has had to say and explain, no, this character is not based on me. Just because we have one thing in common, being a successful novelist, doesn't mean the character is based on me or that this book is about my life. So there are cases where it's kind of the masses who try and dictate what is and what isn't autofiction, which is kind of interesting because by nature, really only the author and those the author is close to can really know that. Sometimes a book feels so realistic and true to life that we assume it must be. Sometimes readers notice superficial similarities between a character or a character's life and the author or the author's life, such as their job, their background, their demographic, and they think, well, this must be autofiction, when it's not. The character and the author just share that one thing in common. Perhaps the author drew inspiration from just this one aspect of their life, and everything else is fiction. In the end, autofiction is a term that describes the author's relationship to their work, not really anything about the work itself, which makes it not really a genre. However, it is definitely a very valid form of writing, and there are a lot of really successful works of autofiction out there, and I'm sure there are very successful works of autofiction that no one even knows are autofiction. There's certainly nothing wrong with writing about your life or a character based on you. In fact, it can lead to extremely rich and compelling writing because you have so much lived experience to draw from. If you've ever written a work of autofiction or you're thinking about writing a book that's autofiction, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. It's not something that I've ever personally tried because I'm just extremely averse to writing about myself. Like, myself is my least favorite topic as a writer. But I've read a lot of great autofiction, so if you haven't written any autofiction yourself, then I would love to hear what your favorite autofiction novel is in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time, bye.